to Wanbli. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining and stay tuned. Wanbli, are you there?
I'm here, Daniel. Thanks for having us again.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all, my friend. So I'm going to let you take it over, and I'm going to get some business done here, and I'll let you take the air.
All right. Appreciate you so much, Daniel. Once more, I want to tell Daniel how much we appreciate the good people of MohawkRadio.com for giving us this airtime to speak about Leonard and the effort we're putting forth now to get him some justice and get him home to Turtle Mountain. And it's a real blessing that Mohawk has given us this opportunity to speak for Leonard Peltier, America's #1 political prisoner. I want to ask you right off the bat to help us help Leonard in Fargo. That's where our main offices are. We need to raise a little funds. We have activities coming up that will require transporting people, housing people, and feeding people here in the next 6 months. Plus, not to mention just the everyday office expenses of rent, lights, and telephones. So, if you could reach in your pocket maybe and find a $10 bill, or maybe a $5. If you're in Canada, throw 5 loonies at us. We'd appreciate it if it came from up there. And send it to the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota. That's the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106, 58106. The office there, the LPDOC there, and the office is staffed by Leonard's sister, Betty Ann Peltier Solano, and his niece, Carrie Ann Cowan. They're the hold down force up there. They're the people who keep it running there. So give them a hand so they don't sit there in the dark. They complain every time the lights get shut off, as if they need lights and candles won't work. So if you'd send them like $10 bill, keep the lights turned on. LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. It would be very deeply appreciated and help us continue this fight to free Leonard. Also want to take a moment to remind everyone of our prayer vigil that is held every second Saturday of the month for Leonard, and it'll be April 11th this month, and it'll be sunrise to sundown at the entrance to the prison in Lewisburg, PA. And that's the corner of Route 15 and William Penn Road. Sunrise to sundown, Saturday, April 11th, at Lewisburg, PA, at the prison, the corner of Route 15 and William Penn Road. It's a time to gather and pray for the freedom of Leonard Peltier. If you can only come and stay a few hours up there, it would be appreciated. Just to let Leonard know that people are out there praying for him, lifts his spirits. And I promise you, when there are people out there, word gets into the prison. The first prayer vigil we had there, one of the people from the prison came by and stopped, and he'd known Leonard for decades, from when he was in another prison. And he said the people in the prison had told Leonard that AIM is on the corner praying for you. So get out there if you can on Saturday, April 11th, sunrise to sundown, the corner of Route 15 and William Penn Road in Lewisburg, PA. If you need to contact the person who facilitates this for us, they may be reached at 610-406-7828. That's 610-406-7828. And they can give you any information you need about getting there, the travel roads and everything in that area. You can also contact them at Wildflower Mist, WILDFLOWERMIST at hotmail.com. That's WILDFLOWERMIST at hotmail.com. Wildflower Mist at hotmail.com. That's Saturday the 11th. Sunrise to sunset. Lewisburg, PA, in front of the prison. Route 15. 15 and William Penn Road. Go up there and lend a prayer for Leonard if you can. And we've been trying to get Leonard transferred out of Lewisburg into it's a high security prison. We want him transferred into a medium or a minimum security prison because his prisoner rating deserves that. And we have tried writing the Bureau of Prisons through the regular channels, and we've gotten canned responses and no responses. So Leonard's one of Leonard's attorneys, Mike Kuzma, advised us a few weeks ago to stop going at the Bureau of Prisons, go around them, go direct to their boss. And the Bureau of Prisons boss is Attorney General Eric Holder. So we ask you, if you would, please, contact Eric Holder and ask him to please find a way to have Leonard transferred to the FCI Sandstone, Minnesota facility or the FCI Oxford, Wisconsin facility. It's a medium security and a minimum security prison there. And Leonard's security rating has been greatly reduced by the Bureau of Prisons and the recognition of his model behavior for the last 30 years. He needs to be put in a place where he was safe. We all remember less than 90 days ago when he was transferred to Canaan, and he was beaten there by a bunch of young thugs. Leonard's 64. He doesn't need to be in an environment where somebody looking to make a name for themselves or looking to get a little boost up for doing some FBI work on the inside of the prison for the FBI can assault him. So we ask you to call Attorney General Eric Holder. His phone number is 202-353-15555. That's Attorney General Eric Holder, area code 202-353-1555. You can also email at AskDOJ, that's ASKDOJ, at USDOJ.gov. That's AskDOJ at USDOJ.gov. And ask to please have Leonard Peltier transferred to a medium or minimum security prison such as the FCI Sandstone, Minnesota facility or the FCI Oxford, Wisconsin facility. Leonard doesn't belong in a max security prison. He's been a model prisoner for 30 years. He deserves to be transferred to a place where he's not surrounded by young thugs that will take advantage of an old man that has a reputation in the world, who's as hard as it is to say, with somebody in prison who is a notable person. And in prison, you can get good notches for getting on top of a notable person if the FBI or the prison warden offers you a little sweet deal to do the FBI's work for them while they're there. So ask the Attorney General Holder, please transfer Leonard to FCI Sandstone, Minnesota, or FCI Oxford, Wisconsin. One more time, phone numbers for the Attorney General is 202-353-1555. And you can call more than once. You know, if you have an opinion, you can state your opinion more than one time. So don't hesitate to call more than once. If it enters your mind one day, pick the phone up and call. If it enters your mind a couple days later, pick the phone up and call again. One thing we want to bring to people's attention here in the States is that Congress goes on their spring recess. Like they haven't been on recess for most of their lives. But they go on their spring recess here, April 4th to April 19th. During that period, they go back to their home districts, and that is a time that they're available for you as a U.S. citizen to talk to your own representative in your district face-to-face. Many of them have town hall meetings when they're in their home districts. All of them will be in their offices at their home districts, which are completely approachable. You can ride the elevator up to whatever floor it is, walk up to the office door, walk right in, and ask to speak to your representative. You may have to sit and wait a little bit. It may even be better to call and make an appointment. But we want you to go talk to these congressmen while they're in your district. And we want you to talk to them about Leonard. We want you to explain to them that Leonard has served over 33 years in prison. We want you to bring up the point that the government has conceded that it does not know who shot the two agents. And we want you to bring up the point that the government still is vigorously fighting the release of thousands and thousands of pages of documents under the FOIA Act, the Freedom of Information Act, documents that should have been turned over to the defense attorney years and years and years ago. You know, listening to Mike Kuzma on a radio show a couple weeks ago, he released the information, and it stunned me that there are over 147,000 documents that have still been unreleased in Leonard's case. Over 147,000. That's a huge amount of documents. And the information contained in those documents, they say, they can't release because it interferes with national security. Well, friends, I promise you, I really do promise you, nothing that happened on Pine Ridge Reservation over 35 years ago can have any impact on national security. What it can have impact on is uncovering FBI lies. It can have impact on uncovering FBI informants. It can have impact in uncovering the very high possibility that Leonard's defense team had been infiltrated by the FBI. All those things could be hidden within those documents that they're hiding. And they're hiding them for a reason. And I promise you, it's not for national security. It has nothing to do with national security. It has to do with the FBI trying to cover up the crimes it committed during that time, during that reign of terror. That was a time when the FBI was still operating with the training they had received during their COINTELPRO operation days. Now, the COINTELPRO operation was a time when the FBI was infiltrating and destroying and doing illegal things, locking people up illegally, making evidence up against anybody who they considered New Left, any kind of activist movements. Remember, this is the late 60s, early 70s. Anybody who was not red, white, and blue, wave the flag and eat turkey and apple pie, the FBI infiltrated. And that mindset was still going when this incident happened at Oglala. And when this happened, illegal things were done. Illegal things were done. And those illegal things that were done by the FBI are hidden within those 147,000 pages of documents that they refused to release. So we ask you, go talk to your congressman, ask them to consider Leonard's 33 years in prison, that the government has not, says they do not know who killed the agents, that there are so many documents being hidden that it is absolutely unfair to the defense team. Leonard will be 65 on September 12th, and he's not very well. And he was brutally attacked in a max security prison on July 13th by two other inmates. And the prison officials did nothing to prevent that attack from happening. So go and talk to these representatives. Your citizens, they work for you. They're in their home districts to hear from you. Now, I'm sure they'll hear about cows and ponds and railroads and PTAs and jobs and electric systems and all these kind of things. But please, 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 let them hear about America's #1 political prisoner, Leonard Peltier. Let them touch on something that they can actually do to correct an injustice that this government has allowed to continue for 33 years. Especially these freshman congressmen. Let them know what's going on. Let them, as people who are new to this system, stand up against the system. So catch them when they're in your district. They'll be there April 4th to 19th. Go visit with them. It's easy. They're people just like you and me. You can sit down and talk to them. They're nothing special. They just happen to have enough friends and enough money to get elected to office. You're as good as they are. Go talk to them face to face. You know, as we have worked hard to free Leonard in these last months, and many people don't realize the LPDOC is right at a year old right now. The old LPDC had stopped responding to Leonard, and Leonard asked his sister if she would start up the LPDOC to help him, and she did, and it started March of last year, so it's barely a year old, and we're having to fight hard to regain ground on lost contacts and getting our people back together, but it's happening, and it's becoming very evident that the FBI is paying attention to us. We have input from the phone calls that we make to the White House phone line, opinion line. We've gotten input that they're getting pro and con calls on Leonard, and that tells us that the FBI's agent association is aware of what we're doing, and they're kicking in to fight against us and against justice. And that's what they're doing. They're fighting against justice. So they've got 10,000 members, and they can get them geared up pretty hard. But we're gonna outdistance them in this. We're gonna beat them in this. And I'm feeling pretty good this evening, actually, because I know something they don't know, and what I know, they better work a little bit harder, because I know something they don't know. So we're going to ask you to help us work for Leonard on the telephone to the White House. And that's, if you will please do this for us, call the White House opinion line at 202-456-1111. Or if that's busy, call 202-456-1112. You know, pass this number on to your family members and to your friends. Write it down on 6 or 7 pieces of paper and stick in your pocket. And everybody you see, everybody you know, hand them that piece of paper and ask them to call the White House. And when they ask you what would you like to comment on, simply say, we would like the President to offer executive clemency to Leonard Peltier. It's real simple to say. It has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. It's clemency. It has to do with mercy. And so, you know, your friends, tell your friends about this. If they feel inclined to make the call, have them make it. Give them a piece of paper with the number on it. And same thing with calling the Attorney General. You don't have to call once a month or once every 6 months. You can call every day. You can call 2 or 3 times a day. We need your help. Leonard needs your phone calls. So if you would, dial that White House comment line at 202-456-1111 or 202-456-1112. Call every day. But on Fridays, we make a real hard push to keep the White House phone lines tied up all day long. The White House has 20 cubicles set up for this comment line, and it's staffed by over 100 individuals. They're set up to handle 1,000. Their average is 1,000 calls a day without anybody having to hold. Some Fridays when we make our hard push to call, people have to hold 4 or 5 minutes. Sometimes they have to hold 18, 20 minutes. We want people to have to hold 18 or 20 minutes to get their call in. That tells us we're getting calls in. The President's hearing about Leonard, because those notes do go to the President's office, and we need to hear when we call that we're going to be on hold a few minutes because people are calling. So if you would, 202-456-1111 or 202-456-1112. Simply ask for executive clemency for Leonard Peltier. That's all you have to say. They'll say thank you very much, and you can be on your way. Give that number to your friends also, if you would. You know, I've gotten to the point when I talk about Leonard, I want people to understand that he's a human being, that he's not this figure that has become only a picture on a poster. He's a human being. And so I've taken to reading some of his writings before I really start a program. I'm going to read one of his pieces right now before we get further into tonight's program. And it's called I Have No Apologies, Only Sorrow. This is by Leonard Peltier. I can't apologize for what I haven't done, but I can grieve, and I do. Every day, every hour, I grieve for those who died at the Oglala firefight in 1975 and for their families. For the families of the FBI agents Jack Collar and Ronald Williams, and yes, for the family of Joe Kilwright Stuntz, a 21-year-old brave-hearted Indian whose death from a bullet at Oglala that same day, like the deaths of other hundreds of Indians at Pine Ridge at that terrible time, has never been investigated. My heart aches in remembering the suffering and fear under which so many of my people were forced to live at that time, the very suffering and fear that brought me and others to Oglala that day to defend the defenseless. I am filled with an aching sorrow, too, for the loss to my own family, because in a very real way, I also died that day. I died to my family, to my children, to my grandchildren, to myself. I lived out my own death for over a quarter of a century now. Those who put me here and keep me here knowing of my innocence can take grim satisfaction in their sure reward, which is being who and what they are. That's as terrible a reward as any I can imagine. I know who and what I am. I am an Indian who dared to stand up to defend his people. I am an innocent man who never murdered anyone nor ever wanted to. And yes, I am a sun dancer. That, too, is my identity. If I am to suffer as a symbol of my people, then I suffer proudly. I will never yield. Leonard Peltier. This is a man who's been locked away for 33 years and has not yielded. He will not yield. David Hill was a good friend of Leonard's. They were together lots of times during that time. David Hill has a wonderful thing, he says, that a man cannot ride your back if you stand up. Leonard has never bowed down. He has always stood up. He has always stood up. So that's the man we're trying to help. That's the man we're trying to bring to freedom. I want to talk a little bit today about the primary piece of evidence that was used against Leonard in his trial in Fargo. It was a shell casing from a .223 caliber rifle. The shell casing has a very strange history, and I believe some of the strange history will be uncovered and made less strange and more terrible for what it has done as these records become released, these hidden FBI records. This shell was picked up, this cartridge casing was picked up out of Agent Collar's car. Agent Collar's car had been gone over by a fine-tooth comb by investigators working on the site in the immediate aftermath of the firefight. No AR-15 or .223 ammunition component was found in Collar's trunk. To the contrary, the Bureau's operative theory for more than a month after the resmurs began, an idea agents attempted to confirm when contriving Johnny Eagle's jailhouse confession and in the initial statements prepared for Norman Brown, Wish Draper, and Mike Anderson, was that the agents had been killed with a .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun. Concerning the AR-15 cartridge casing itself, described by the prosecution as, quote, the most important piece of evidence, unquote, in the Peltier case, the Bureau could never quite determine who found it, when and what happened to it after it was found. The discovery was originally attributed to the chief of the FBI's Firearms and Tool Marks Division, Cortland Cunningham. At least that is what was maintained in a July 1st, 1976 affidavit prepared at FBI headquarters and sent to Rapid City for Cunningham's signature. And this is in the Peltier trial transcripts, page 2114 to 2126. Instead, upon receipt of this, Cunningham contended that the casing had been found by a fingerprint specialist named Winthrop Lodge. Lodge then testified that he discovered the item during an examination of Collar's car on June 29, 1975, and had turned it over to Cunningham. Again, this is from Peltier trial transcript 2012-2013 and 3079 to 3080. On cross-examination, Lodge began to contradict himself, first claiming that he had not removed evidentiary from Collar's car, then stating that some material had been removed, and then asserting that all evidence had been inventoried and removed from the vehicle. Again, this is from Leonard's trial transcripts, page 3112 to 3120. When passed on what had originally happened to this material, including the cartridge casing he allegedly found, Lodge first insisted, and this is all in trial transcripts, Lodge first insisted he had turned it all over to Cunningham, but had unaccountably failed to get the receipt required by the Bureau Evidentiary Procedures designed to prevent false evidence from being gratuitously introduced somewhere along the line. He then switched stories, stating that not all the evidence gathered from Collar's car had been turned over to Cunningham. This FBI agent switched stories time after time about this cartridge, where this cartridge came from, and how it got to be where it would be. What we're looking for, my friends, in these records is exactly this. Where did this cartridge come from, and how did it get to be where it was? I'm going to continue on here. This is from the trial transcript. Some of these items, he said, were carried back to Pine Ridge and turned over to the agent personally in charge of the evidence. But Lodge couldn't say who this agent was, or exactly what had been carried back to him, or why the unorthodox decision had taken certain unreceipted inventory items over to Cunningham and some to another agent. Again, my friends, this is from the Peltier trial transcript, 3137 to 3138 and 3162 to 3163. In other words, there was never anything resembling a clear record of where the FBI's, quote, most important piece of evidence came from, when it was found, where it was found, and by whom it was found, and what happened to it in between time it was allegedly found and the time it was cataloged at the FBI crime lab in Washington, D.C. Such contamination of the evidentiary chain, allowing as it does for the introduction for false evidence, is typically sufficient to cause the material to be disallowed from introduction into the trial. Never mind a capital case such as the Resmers trial. We have a piece of evidence that they claim is the most important piece of evidence in the trial. This piece of evidence was not logged properly. They cannot decide among themselves who found it, when it was found, where it was taken to, where it was taken from. This is something we've been suspecting for a very long time, and the more we look into this, the more it becomes very obvious this piece of evidence was placed. Remember, this is an agent testifying under oath, changing his testimony as he went. Where is the truth? It's hidden in unreleased documents. Just another example of the very suspicious way that this piece of evidence found its way into the trial, and how FBI agents lie under oath. But even beyond that is the way it was approached during the trial itself. Critical ballistics information was withheld from the defense team concerning this mysterious shell casing, making a fair trial completely impossible. Portions of this information were later obtained through the Freedom of Information. Moreover, other key information was improperly ruled inadmissible. Specifically, at the trial, the FBI ballistics expert, Evan Hodge, testified that he had conducted an extractor mark test and compared the AR-15, which is attributed to Leonard, with the .223 casing found near in the agent's trunk, and found them to match. Hodge based his testimony on a test performed in February 1976, some 6 months after receiving the casing and over 4 months after receiving the gun alleged to have been Mr. Peltier's. However, a FBI ballistics report showed that Mr. Hodge had tested the cartridges far earlier, in October 75. First, Hodge says he didn't test them until February 76. And then this thing shows up, says he tested them in 75, and found that none of them matched the weapon that supposedly belonged to Mr. Peltier. At trial, however, the defense counsel was not permitted to tell the jury that the test showing that the gun and the casing were incompatible was performed first, and that the test finding that the rifle and casing matched was in fact performed much later as the prosecution put together its case. Most importantly, Mr. Hodge also testified at the trial that the firing pin test is a highly conclusive test in comparison to the extractor test, which is far less conclusive. He stated that due to the damage to the rifle, the more precise type test could not be carried out. He also stated that during the October testing, he had not yet examined the critical casing found near the agent's car or in the agent's trunk. Later, documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act showed that the 1975 ballistic testing was in fact based on the more precise firing pin test, and that the results had been negative. However, the Freedom of Information Act files also included documents stressing the urgency for the testing of the key casing at once, this contradicting Mr. Hodge's claim that he had simply not gotten around to testing that casing until 6 months after it was received. In short, the fatal bullet did not come from the weapon assigned to Leonard Peltier. But the jury never heard about these crucial issues. And here we have another instance of the FBI lying under oath, fabricating and concealing evidence. We have this cartridge that showed up out of nowhere, that nobody quite claims to have found, that nobody quite knows where it went through its travels in this 5-6 month period, but it showed up there. Very mysterious, most important piece of evidence, is the most questionable piece of evidence in the whole trial, and is the most vaporous, smoky, non-existent piece of evidence. At the murder trial, the prosecutor, referring to the murder weapon, had stated there was only one AR-15 in the group. There is no testimony concerning any other AR-15. Leonard's lawyers later filed a habeas corpus petition claiming that the government had misled the jury by concealing evidence of other AR-15 and thus potential murder weapons at the crime scene. The same prosecuting attorney before the 8th Circuit Court in 92 claimed, "I think it's simply a misstatement of the trial that there was no evidence presented, and it was suppressed as to other AR-15s at the scene." First, they claimed that there was only one there, and that was Leonard's. Then they suppressed the evidence that there were others there. And then, as a typical FBI ploy to get around getting caught in a lie, they say they misspoke. They misspoke this man into jail. They misspoke him into jail. They stood there under oath. Federal agents, under oath, misspoke this man into jail. And I'm sorry, my friends, they didn't misspoke. They perjured themselves. And finally, the weapon itself, an AR-15, which is a civilian model of the M16, always ejects high and to the right. For the cartridge to eject into the trunk of Agent Collar's car, the weapon would have had to been fired some 11 to 15 feet away from the car and to the rear of the rear bumper. That is how this weapon works. Every time. It would have been impossible for an AR-15 to have been fired the way the FBI said it was, and the casing to eject into the trunk. Impossible, my friends. It would be impossible to happen. It couldn't happen. This cartridge, somewhere, this mysterious cartridge that wasn't found for days. And you have to remember, an FBI evidence collection team was all over that car. They were at a murder scene of two of their own agents. An FBI evidence collection team could find an eyelash in a haystack. They could find an eyelash in the floor mat of a car. They went all over that car. They could not, any conceivable way, have missed a gold, shiny cartridge casing as big as my little finger laying in the trunk. That cartridge casing was placed in there sometime between the 26th and the 29th. In the records that's being held from everyone, there will be evidentiary sign-ins and sign-outs of who first collected the cartridges from around the greenhouse on Jumping Bull. And there are over 100 AR-15 cartridges collected there, or 223 cartridges. Whoever collected the cartridges at the house, somewhere we're going to find he also signed in to have access to the agent's vehicle, which was also a piece of evidence and had to be signed in and out of to have access to. My friends, listen to me. I'm asking you just to think logically. I'm not asking you to believe the FBI statements. I'm asking you to believe what is logic. The FBI is at a murder scene of their own two agents. They believed it was murder at the time, and it was self-defense, proven later. But they're hunting for any evidence they can find about these two deaths. Any evidence. They tore those cars apart looking for evidence. And they overlooked a gold, shiny cartridge as big as my little finger lying in the trunk of that vehicle. It's completely unbelievable. Completely unbelievable. But people bought it. You know why? No one questioned it. No one questioned it. No one questioned the way an AR-15 works as a weapon. Nobody questioned that. Again, the AR-15 always ejects high and to the right.
The 4th
Always.
of July,
Always.
1776.
So that cartridge
On a
be
day of
ejected
high
in the
emotions,
trunk of that vehicle,
hours after declaring independence,
the shooter
Congress asked
would have
Thomas
had to be
Jefferson,
11 to 15
Ben Franklin,
feet
and
away
John
from the
Adams
vehicle
to choose an
and to the
emblem
rear
for
of
the
the
fledgling
rear bumper.
United States.
If the
What
weapon
symbol
had been fired
would
the way
best
the
represent
FBI
a new
states it
sovereign
was,
nation and a
the
free people?
cartridge would ejected
The committee
front of the
first
car
looked to history
or over the hood
and
of the
began
car,
with a classical
or
design.
11 to 15
Then
seats
inspiration
out of the
stepped
car
in.
on the driver's
They
side.
turned to nature, to
Sometimes
something
you have to
powerfully
look
alive.
at the details. Sometimes the devil's in the details.
The bald eagle
Devils in
was
the FBI
distinctly
details.
American, the ultimate
cartridge was
emblem of a
placed
nation with soaring
One day,
aspirations.
and I may be dirt, blown away.
Since then, the
One
American
day,
eagle has had
all
swings
the
of
papers are
fortune
going to come out on
every
this
bit as
terrorist
dramatic
injustice.
as those of the
All the
United
papers will come
States.
out. It will be known. The FBI framed an innocent man because they wanted to nail an Indian. They wanted to nail an Indian because 2 of their agents had died that day.
I think that being an eagle
2 of their agents died that
is a
day.
tough thing. I mean, they're out
We all
there
know.
every day living on the
And it's a
edge
sad
of
thing.
survival.
And it's the biggest
I'm Neil
biggest
Redding.
manhunt
I'm a natural
in US
history filmmaker. I've been making
Correct.
wildlife documentaries for over
Bob
30
Dino.
years.
know
My
what?
big passion in life, though, has
Indian
been birds
man
of prey.
died that day.
The really neat thing about this is that
Mr. Joe Kilwright Stunts
on a day like today, you
Murdered
have
that day.
unlimited visibility,
by an aggressor,
180 degrees.
and the court proved an aggressor
After all
that
these
day
years,
because it was proven in the trial of Dino
the
and
national
Bob,
bird, a bird that
who were found innocent for reason of self-defense, defending themselves against an aggressor. The aggressor that day who murdered Joe Stunts was the FBI. That's who did it. That's what they're covering up. They're covering up their own culpability in the death of their 2 agents and the murder of Joe Stunts. And like I said, biggest manhunt in history for Bob, Dino, and Leonard. No investigation at all on the death of an Indian man that day. None at all. None at all. Well, you know, there's a bunch of us raggedy-ass Indians are going to see that happens one day. We're going to see that a trial is held, an investigation is held, and a trial is held, and somebody is convicted in the murder of Joe Stunts. Talking about this cartridge, this has been through the appellate process. On April 4th, 84, the appeals case was remanded to the district court for an evidentiary hearing. The hearing began October 1st in Bismarck, October 1st, 84. Expert witness, again, Mr. Evan Hodge, surprisingly divulged that he had testified before the grand jury on November 24th and 25th, just prior to Peltier's indictment, and that he had not written, but merely signed the ballistics affidavit used to extradite Peltier from Canada. The government has illegally withheld the grand jury testimony from the defense team. All on this cartridge, another thing they've done. They withheld this grand jury testimony from the defense team. Confronted by FBI teletypes, Hodge invalidated his earlier testimony, according to government prosecutors, the most crucial testimony in Peltier's trial. Well, Hodge had testified that he and only one assistant had examined the evidence. Notes in a third style of handwriting were present on the lab report. Well, how about that? FBI agent lying again. Golly, doesn't that surprise you? Gee whiz, I'm going to have to sit down and think this over. I thought these people were the cream of the crop. They didn't lie. They lie all the time. You got to get used to that, my friends. Denying on the stand a third participant in the evaluation of the evidence, therefore committing perjury, Hodge later claimed, now listen here it comes, Hodge later claimed he had misspoken. Well, you know, when you can lie and misspeak and put a man in prison for 33 years, you ought to go sit in prison yourself a while. That's something else we would like to see as we bring all this to a head, is all these FBI agents who perjured themselves to lock Leonard up. We would like to see them tried for perjury. I don't care if they're 90 years old. Leonard's 65 almost, been in jail 33 years. If Mr. Evan Hodge is 80 years old and his perjury put Leonard Peltier in jail, he needs to be tried for perjury and sit his butt in a federal prison for something that he actually did. Leonard Peltier is sitting there for something he never did. You know, the circuit court implicitly acknowledged that the government had used dishonest means to effect Peltier's conviction. The court concluded that the government, quote, withheld evidence from the defense favorable to Peltier, unquote, which, quote, cast a strong doubt on the government's case, end quote, and that had this other evidence been brought forth, quote, there is a possibility that the jury would have acquitted Leonard Peltier. The court further found that there was more than one AR-15 in the area at the time of the shootout. What we need to understand is when we speak of Leonard Peltier being a political prisoner, as that is what has happened. We see time after time laws have been broken, perjury has been committed. We see time after time where appellate court judges say that they know the government did this wrong and they know the government did that wrong, and if the government hadn't have done that, Peltier would not have been convicted. But we see these appellate court judges not doing anything. And why? Because Leonard is a political prisoner. And what does a political prisoner mean? It means this man is in jail because of the controversion of the law, and that comes from the government holding a political prisoner. We can't expect the law when the government is holding a political prisoner to protect him, because the law is controverted by the government. We see it. It's there in the court records. Perjury after perjury after perjury. Lie after lie. Evidence showing up out of nowhere, disappearing into nowhere, and showing up back out of the ether again. Tests being performed and never admitted to until after trials are over. And the big thing that kind of creeps up in your mind, the weapon they attribute to Leonard Peltier. After just reading what I just read you, they finally admitted there were other AR-15s in the area, and they pulled this weapon from the burnout car in Kansas after the car had exploded and burned up. Let me ask you, do you think they found Leonard Peltier's fingerprints on a weapon that had been through an explosion and a fire? No. No way. What they had done is they put a 14 and a 15-year-old Indian boy in a motel room for 3 days and pressured them into saying that Leonard had the only AR-15 there, and then they started building their case around AR-15, and they collected all the AR-15 shells up around the house, and they figured, we'll throw one in the trunk here in a little bit, and they did. They did. These agents weren't executed. These agents, according to Bob Robidoux, and Bob Robidoux has admitted pulling the trigger on these agents. Bob Robidoux said they went out fighting. They went out like FBI agents are trained to, with never giving up their guns. They went out fighting. Bob Robidoux was found innocent because he was protecting himself against somebody who was shooting at him. Leonard Peltier never killed anybody. Need to understand that, need to realize that. I ask you, please, 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 talk to your friends about this case. Have them understand that this can happen to them. This can happen to them. Remind them of a man named David Koresh in Texas who became a political problem. Remind them of the deaths that took place there. Remind them of the lies that happened in that instance. Remind them of the FBI saying they didn't use incendiary devices there, and remind them of the films that show the FBI using incendiary devices. Remind them of the other COINTELPRO actions that took people's freedom, that took people's lives because of lies, that put people in jail because of lies. Remind them of Geronimo Pratt. This is history, my friends. You can look it up. Geronimo Pratt has just been released, not just, but in the last few years been released, after serving 27 years for a crime he did not commit. It was established the key evidence against him was falsified by the FBI. Now, Mr. Pratt was the leader of the Black Panther Party. It's now a member of public record that the FBI COINTEL program considered such minority organizations to to constitute a threat to domestic security. And that's what they considered AIM, a threat to domestic security. It's not just me and all the friends of Leonard who believe these things. It's not only a belief, we know these things. These things are known. Other FBI agents see this also. And I'm going to take you one more time to Mr. M. Wesley Swearingen, who said, he's an ex-FBI agent, and he stated, I was an FBI agent in Los Angeles when Leonard Peltier was convicted, and I know from FBI documents that I read and from statements made by fellow FBI agents that Peltier was wrongly convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents just because the agents investigating the case wanted someone to pay for killing the 2 agents. I know for a fact that the FBI is also covering up its culpability in the death of the 2 FBI agents. End quote. That's an FBI agent. He knows this. He's seen enough for himself to know this. And I'm asking, if there are any agents out there listening, if there are any agents out there of the new generation, if there are any agents out there who truly believe in a justice system, I'm asking you, please, please, don't take the old boy's story. Please, please, use your own head, use your own intelligence. Most of you guys are lawyers. Use your own investigative process. Avail yourself to the records that are there. Educate yourself on this and see what your agency did then. See what your agency did then. You know, this Agent Swearingen, he truly believes in Leonard's innocence. You know, he writes to Ed Wood. Ed Wood is another ex-FBI agent. And Wood was asking Swearingen why he believed as he believed. And Swearingen replies, it has been 28 years since I retired from the FBI and 33 years since I worked at the Racial Squad in Los Angeles. The Racial Squad is where he helped get Geronimo Pratt out because he found out the FBI made up evidence. And he goes on to say, there's no way that I can remember details specifying when and where and exactly what was said to support my belief of wrongful conviction. I was convinced at the time that Peltier was convicted that the FBI did its best to convict an innocent man. And he goes on to say, this is one agent speaking to another agent, if you want to learn what actually happened in the Peltier case, I suggest you read all the FBI documents that have been released to date, and then read the thousands of documents that have not been released by the FBI. What is the FBI hiding that they have to withhold thousands of documents relating to the killing of Jack and Ron Williams? End quote. This is an FBI agent saying just what I said. What are they hiding? What are they hiding? What is in those records that they have to hide them? My friends, what is in those records is the proof that the FBI framed Leonard Peltier. More than that, there is proof that the FBI had infiltrated Peltier's defense team. There's a certain person who was on the defense team that actually he was a head lawyer for the defense team named Takeoff. This man ended up being the head lawyer for the defense team. He had never tried a murder case in his life. Never in his life. I have a friend who has access to records in Washington, D.C. And he has good access. And I asked him to find me information about Takeoff. And he contacted me back stating that he could not find any information about Takeoff because the records were, quote, locked, unquote. He told me, and this is he deals with this kind of thing every day. He told me that the only time records are locked or when a person is involved with the CIA or the FBI. Leonard's attorney's records are locked. Now, I hate to speak bad about the dead because he's dead, but somewhere in those records, I fully believe we will find, and it's in the end file, Mike Kuzma said, now he didn't say this is in the end file, but he said the end file contains 147,000 pages of records, and most of those records have to do with paid informers, people who are working for the FBI on the case. We're going to find so many things if we could ever get these records released. What we've all known for all these years, one day will come out. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you, if you're an FBI agent out there, if you're out there and you're truly working for your country, please have just have the tapas to step back just for a day. Step back from taught belief of this case and be an actual investigator. Look at this case yourself. Look at it. Use your investigative mind. Use the resources you have. Have a real look at it. Help us here. Truly be a public servant here. There's a crime been committed against the people here. And it wasn't by Leonard Peltier. It was by your own agency. And we ask you to be man enough, woman enough to stand up and say, I want my agency investigated for this happening. I want my agency investigated for the reign of terror that took place on Pine Ridge, 72, 73, 74, 75, where over 60 Indian people were killed, over 300 were brutally attacked. Stand up. Remember the time that was in this country. Remember in this country the civil rights movement had been on fire. Remember Martin King had been attacked and the FBI tried to destroy him. Remember the FBI misconduct at that time. And remember, it's the same mindset that happened that day at Oglala. And please look and see that what the jury found in Bob and Dino's case is true. That the FBI was an aggressor using deadly force that day on Jumping Bull. And that Bob and Dino and anybody else there was entitled to respond back with deadly force. Leonard Peltier, even though he has killed no one, was entitled to respond back using deadly force. The man who actually did the killings has admitted it. It's known he admitted it. Bob Robidoux admitted it. And he admitted it openly. It's public record also. You can find it if you just search. And he also was acquitted for reasons of self-defense. So let me ask you, friends, how can one man be sitting in jail for aiding and abetting in self-defense? Is that against the law? If you're in your home and someone is attacking your family and you shoot to someone and your son shoots at to someone and you're acquitted for self-defense, can your son be imprisoned for aiding and abetting for self-defense? That's what happened, my friends. That's what happened. These people were on their private property. The FBI stormed in, and a gunfight started. The jury themselves, not me, the jury declared that the FBI was the aggressor that day and an aggressor using deadly force. The people the FBI were using deadly force against that day defended themselves as they had the right to do. Everybody there had the right to defend themselves against an aggressor using deadly force. There were children there. There were old people. There were women there. That's why AIM was there, was to protect those people from the reign of terror that had been going on up there. We ask you to join in this fight. We ask you, federal agents, if you're out there listening, join in this fight with us. Stand up and truly be public servants. Stand up. Stand up. Don't let the old school talk you into being like they were. Because what they did was a crime against the people of this country, a crime against the people of Oglala, a crime against Leonard Peltier. And if they get by with it, let me tell you, they can do it again if they try. Because nobody will stand up and nobody will speak up. So please, if your agents out there listening, and I bet money there's one or two listening, I'm asking you, back off from your preconceived ideas of this case. Back off. Put on your investigative hat. Look at this case as an investigator. One more time, just look at it as an investigator. Remember, Geronimo Pratt was convicted. And it was later learned that he was innocent because the FBI constructed evidence to convict him because he was the leader of the Black Panthers. The FBI was after the leaders of AIM at that time in our nation's history. I ask you, if you're an agent, look at it. Look at it seriously. Go through the records that we don't have access to. Help us. Help us find freedom for Leonard Peltier. Help us to find justice for Leonard Peltier. Help us bring Leonard Peltier to home to his family, who has been without him for 33 years. Help him hold his sister's hand. Help him bounce his grandchildren on his knee. Help Leonard Peltier achieve freedom and justice. In the meantime, help us help Leonard. Call the White House. Make your voice heard. Go to our website, whoisleonardpeltier.info. Find out more about the case. Find out the truth. Understand we're having to re-educate a whole bunch of people who have grown up never even knowing who Leonard is. This is a shameful piece of our nation's history. It's a terrible piece of a Native American history, and this is something we need to fix. And I ask you to come help us. And I thank you for listening tonight. I ask you all to remember, aim for freedom. Freedom for Leonard Peltier. And Daniel, I'm going to be going now. I thank you so very, very much for your time again this evening. And we will talk to you next week, my friend.
Will do.
Dogsha.
Oh, Anna. Well, thank you for those who have joined Wanbli and Free Leonard Peltier discourse here on Mohawk-radio.com. And I'm just waiting for the big man Ross Montour to come in and